You don't feel like it. You woke up today and something inside you whispered, "Not today." And the worst part is, you listened. That's not just a bad morning. That's a pattern. That's a prison, constructed brick by brick from feelings you never trained yourself to override. Most men will never admit this, but they are not being controlled by enemies, circumstances, or even their past. They are being controlled by a sensation, temporary, weak, and completely conquerable. Machiavelli never wrote for comfort. He wrote for those ruthless enough to face reality without flinching. And reality says this: the world does not care how you feel. It pays in results. It respects action. It rewards the man who moves even when everything inside him is screaming to stay still. Motivation is a lie sold to the weak. The powerful don't wait for it. They move before it shows up. They build through resistance and become something feelings could never create. The gap between the man you are and the man you could be is not talent. It is not time. It is one decision, made again and again without hesitation, without apology. Drop in the comments. I move before I'm ready. Number 2, the philosophy of forced action. Machiavelli understood something modern self-help will never truly teach you, that waiting for the right moment is the most sophisticated form of cowardice ever invented. It looks responsible. It sounds logical. It even feels wise, but underneath it, buried beneath all that planning and patience, is fear wearing a suit. And fear, when left unchallenged, doesn't stay still. It grows, it spreads, it rewrites your identity until you start believing you're someone who just needs more time, more preparation, more clarity. When in truth, you need none of that. You need movement. Machiavelli wrote that fortune is like a river, violent, unpredictable, and completely indifferent to your comfort. But he also said, the man who prepares, who builds his defenses before the flood, can bend that river to his will. Not by feeling ready, not by waiting for calm waters, but by acting with such cold precision that even chaos becomes a tool. That is forced action. It is not recklessness. It is not ignorance. It is understanding that action creates clarity, while hesitation destroys it. Every time you push through resistance, your brain adapts, your identity shifts. You stop being the man who waits for permission and start becoming the man who gives it to himself, on his own terms, without needing validation. Dark psychology shows that the most dangerous men in any room are not the loudest, not the most aggressive, not even the smartest. They are the ones who have mastered acting against their own comfort, consistently, quietly, without turning it into a performance. Because they understand what weak men never learn. Discipline practiced in private becomes dominance displayed in public. Every rep done when you didn't want to, every call made through anxiety, every page written through doubt, it all compounds, it all turns into armor. It becomes power that cannot be touched, questioned, or taken away. Comment right now: discipline in private, dominance in public. Number 3, the enemy lives inside you. Let me tell you something most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Your greatest enemy is not your competition. It is not the people who doubted you, ignored you, or tried to break you. It is not the system, the economy, or the conditions you were born into. Your greatest enemy wakes up in the same bed as you. It breathes your air. It speaks in your voice. It knows every fear you've never said out loud and every dream you quietly let die. Your greatest enemy is the version of you that has learned to be comfortable with being small, and that enemy is intelligent. Do not underestimate it. It doesn't attack with obvious weakness. It doesn't tell you to quit outright because you'd fight back. Instead, it negotiates. It whispers, "Rest today, start tomorrow." It tells you you've already done enough. It disguises laziness as self-care and dresses procrastination as strategy. It is the most dangerous opponent you will ever face because it lives behind your own eyes and speaks with your own voice. And it has been studying you since the day you were born. Machiavelli warned that the most dangerous enemies are the ones closest to you, the ones who know your patterns, your vulnerabilities, your hidden doubts. He spoke of courts and kings, but the deepest truth is internal. The saboteur with the most access to your life is you. Not the version you show occasionally, but the deeply ingrained, comfort-addicted system you've built over years of choosing ease over growth. And here is what cold psychology makes clear. You cannot negotiate with that part of yourself. You cannot reason with it, comfort it, or wait for it to change. You must override it, deliberately, repeatedly, without guilt and without ceremony. Not because you hate yourself, but because you respect the man, you are becoming more than you fear the discomfort required to become him. That is not cruelty. That is self-mastery at its highest level. Drop in the comments, "I am my own most dangerous enemy, and I still win." Number 4, the mechanics of self-override. So how do you actually do it? How do you stare resistance in the face, feel its full weight pressing against you, and still move forward? This is where most conversations about discipline collapse. They tell you to be stronger, they tell you to want it more, they throw a quote at you and send you back into the same patterns that have been defeating you for years. That is not instruction, that is decoration. What you need is mechanics. You need a cold, precise understanding of how the mind resists action and exactly how to cut through it without waiting for willpower to arrive like an unreliable soldier. Here is the truth that neuroscience and Machiavellian strategy both agree on. The mind does not resist work. It resists starting. The moment you begin, resistance loses most of its strength. The real friction exists in the gap between intention and action. That small window, 2, 5, maybe 10 seconds, between deciding to act and actually acting is where your future is decided every single day. So the strategy is not to overpower resistance emotionally. That is exhausting and unsustainable. The strategy is to shrink the gap, make the distance between decision and action so small, so automatic, so compressed that your feelings don't even get a vote. You don't ask yourself how you feel. You don't analyze your energy or wait for the perfect mindset. You just move. One step, one action, one word written, one rep completed, one call made. Because Machiavelli understood that power is not built through grand gestures. It is built through thousands of small, forced actions that nobody sees, nobody applauds, and nobody even knows about. And those actions, repeated over time, build something that cannot be denied, dismissed, or taken from you, not even by your own mind. This is not motivation. This is structure. You are not trying to feel better. You are building a system, a set of trained responses and hardened habits where action becomes your default and hesitation becomes something foreign. The man who builds this does not need hype. He does not need music. He wakes up, evaluates, and executes because execution is who he has become. And that identity, built through repeated, forced action, becomes the most unshakable foundation a man can stand on. Comment right now. Execution is my identity. Number 5. What Machiavelli truly meant by power. Most people who mention Machiavelli have never actually understood him. They take one quote out of context and reduce one of history's most strategic minds into something shallow, just cruelty and manipulation. That is a shallow interpretation by shallow men. Go deeper. Read between the lines of The Prince, and what you find is not a guide for villains. You find a brutally honest breakdown of reality, human nature stripped of illusion, power dynamics exposed without the comfortable lies society uses to keep people obedient. Machiavelli was not teaching men to be evil, he was teaching them to see clearly. And there is nothing more dangerous to a system built on your ignorance than a man who sees clearly. Because when you see clearly, you stop waiting for fairness. You stop expecting the world to reward intention. You stop confusing effort with results and busyness with progress. You begin to understand that real power, lasting, undeniable power, is not given. It is built step by step, decision by decision, sacrifice by sacrifice, in silence, when nobody is watching, when nobody is applauding, and when the only thing between you and everything you want is your ability to keep going without external validation. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must be both a lion and a fox, the lion to intimidate, the fox to recognize traps. And in your own life, that means aggression alone is not enough. You need intelligence with intensity, strategy combined with relentless execution. You need to know when to move with force and when to move with precision. This is what separates occasional success from consistent dominance. Consistency is not glamorous. It doesn't trend. It doesn't impress in the moment. But it is the most powerful force behind any great life, career, or empire, because consistency, applied with Machiavellian precision and stoic endurance, compounds into something the world cannot ignore. And here is the truth most people don't want to face. Most men operate far below their actual capacity, not because they lack talent, not because they lack opportunity, but because they have never made the ruthless decision to stop treating their potential like a suggestion and start treating it like a responsibility. Your potential is not a gift. It is a debt, and it must be paid through action, through discomfort, through daily forced execution. Every day you delay, the cost increases, but every day you act, push, and override the noise, you invest into a future version of yourself that becomes untouchable. Drop in the comments, "My potential is not a gift, it is an obligation." Number 6, the cold truth about motivation. Let me destroy something for you right now, something you've been conditioned to chase your entire life, like a man chasing a shadow, never catching it, never understanding why, but continuing anyway because everyone else is running too. And at some point, the act of chasing itself started to feel like progress. That thing is motivation, and you need to understand this clearly. Motivation is not a foundation. It is not a strategy. It is not a system. It is a feeling. And feelings, no matter how intense or real they feel in the moment, are the most unreliable currency you can build your life on. Motivation shows up uninvited and disappears without warning. It spikes after a powerful moment, a video, a loss, a realization at 2 a.m. when silence forces truth into your mind. And then it fades. Life gets heavy. Sleep drops. Results take longer than expected. People around you don't understand what you're building. The daily friction of life starts grinding against your vision like sandpaper against something fragile. And suddenly, that fire that once felt permanent fades into an ember, then into ash, and finally into nothing. And the man who built his entire system on motivation finds himself back at the beginning, starting over again. This is not weakness. This is biology. This is the predictable, well-documented, completely natural cycle of human emotion. The issue is not that motivation disappears. The issue is that most men never build anything beneath it strong enough to take control when it does. Machiavelli understood that a prince who only rules when conditions are favorable is not a ruler at all. He is a passenger. Real leaders, real men of power, operate with systems that function regardless of emotional climate. They build within themselves a machine of action that does not rely on feeling to keep moving. And dark psychology pushes this even further. The most formidable individuals are not the most passionate. They are the most conditioned. They have trained their minds and bodies through repeated forced action to associate movement not with inspiration, but with identity. They don't ask themselves if they feel like working. They work because that is who they are. Because at some point they made a silent, unbreakable decision that their actions would no longer be dictated by unstable emotions. They became cold, not in cruelty, but in consistency. Cold like a machine that doesn't require encouragement. Cold like a river that never asks permission to reach the ocean. Cold like a man who has seen through every comfortable illusion and chosen the harder truth as his permanent reality. And that coldness is not emptiness, it is mastery. It is what happens when a man stops negotiating with himself and starts commanding himself. And on the other side of that command, he meets a version of himself he never knew existed. Stronger, quieter, more capable than he ever imagined when he was still waiting to feel ready. Comment right now. I don't wait for fire. I am the fire. Number 7, the Stoic warrior and the Machiavellian mind. There exists an intersection that most people never reach, a crossroads where two of the most powerful philosophies in human history meet and create something extraordinary. On one side stands Stoicism, ancient, disciplined, forged in the lives of Marcus Aurelius commanding armies while writing by candlelight, Epictetus building wisdom from slavery, and Seneca facing mortality with clarity instead of panic. Stoicism teaches a radical act, the separation of what you can control from what you cannot, and the discipline to focus all your energy only on what is within your power, releasing everything else with a cold detachment that looks like indifference, but is actually the highest form of inner strength. On the other side stands Machiavelli, strategic, unsentimental, and brutally honest about power and human nature. Where Stoicism looks inward, Machiavelli looks outward, studying the world not as it should be, but as it truly is. Ruthless, consistent, and indifferent. He does not comfort. He does not soften reality. He observes, analyzes, and prescribes with surgical precision. Now combine these two inside one man and understand what you get. You get a man who has mastered his internal world through stoic discipline while navigating the external world with Machiavellian intelligence. A man who cannot be emotionally hijacked because he owns his reactions completely. A man who cannot be outmaneuvered because he sees multiple steps ahead. A man who does not act from impulse, ego, or the need for validation, but from a place of complete self-command. His presence alone communicates power without words. People feel it, even if they cannot explain it. He commands attention without demanding it. He earns respect without chasing it. He moves with a gravity that shifts the behavior of those around him. And what they are sensing is a man who has integrated these philosophies so deeply that forced action is no longer forced. It has become natural, effortless, in the way only deeply practiced things become effortless. Not because they require no energy, but because the energy has been trained so thoroughly that it flows without resistance, without internal conflict, without the exhausting debate between who he is and who he wants to become. That debate is over. The Stoic within has silenced the noise. The Machiavellian mind has mapped the terrain. And the man standing at that intersection does not hesitate, does not doubt, and does not wait. Because waiting is a luxury he gave up the moment he decided that greatness is not something he is chasing, but something he lives from right now, regardless of how he feels. That decision, made once and reinforced daily, carved into every habit and every action, is what makes a man not just successful, but legendary. Not just powerful, but untouchable. Drop in the comments. Stoic within, Machiavellian without, unstoppable always. Number 8. The price of inaction. I want you to sit with something uncomfortable for a moment. Not the discomfort of hard work. You already understand that, and part of you even respects it. I want you to feel a different kind of discomfort. The kind that does not come from action, but from the slow, silent decay caused by inaction. Because here is what nobody tells you when they romanticize rest, when they glorify pausing, when they disguise avoidance as patience or self-care or perfect timing. Inaction has a price. And it is not paid in one dramatic moment of failure that you can learn from. It is paid slowly, quietly, invisibly. It is the daily erosion of your potential, your confidence, your self-worth, and your belief in your ability to change your life. Every day you do not act, something inside you fades, not loudly, not dramatically. It doesn't leave a visible mark. It simply withdraws, like a tide slowly pulling back from the shore, until one day you look up and realize how far the water has gone. Your ambition feels distant, your drive feels unfamiliar. And the cruelest part of inaction is what it does to your identity, because every time you face resistance and choose comfort instead of execution, you are casting a vote. Not for laziness, your mind is too sophisticated for that framing. You are casting a vote for a story about who you are, what you are capable of, and what you deserve. And when that story is repeated enough times, believed deeply enough, reinforced daily, it becomes a conviction. And those convictions become the invisible structure of your life. The unseen limits that decide how far you go, how high you reach, how much you allow yourself to want. Machiavelli understood the cost of hesitation in war, that a leader who delays action does not just lose the moment, he loses momentum. And momentum, once lost, is far harder to recover than any single defeat. In the battlefield of self-development, the same rule applies with brutal accuracy. Hesitation doesn't just slow you down, it changes how you see yourself. It rewires your self-image at a level so deep and so subtle that most men never even recognize the damage. They just wake up one day feeling slightly smaller than they used to, slightly further away from the life they once believed they could build, quietly settling into a version of existence their younger self would have refused to accept without a fight. And dark psychology confirms what Machiavelli implied and what Stoicism forces you to confront without hesitation. The most painful human experience is not failure. Failure can be processed. Failure carries information. Failure, when faced with courage and cold analysis, becomes the raw material of transformation. The most painful experience is regret, the quiet, haunting, irreversible realization of knowing exactly what you were capable of and watching yourself choose comfort over that capability again and again, day after day, year after year, until the gap between your potential and your reality becomes so vast it feels like staring into an abyss. That is the real cost of inaction. Not just the loss of success, though that matters, but the internal erosion of the man who knows, at his core, that he had more to give and chose not to give it. Do not become that man. You are here for a reason. Something inside you hasn't given up yet. Something still burns beneath the conditioning, beneath the comfort, beneath every time you chose the easier path. That part of you brought you here. Respect it. Not tomorrow, not when things are easier, not when you feel ready or inspired. Now, because now is the only battlefield that has ever existed and the only one where anything can still change. Comment right now. I refuse to pay the price of inaction. Number 9. Building the unbreakable version of yourself. Everything we've covered so far has been preparation, the philosophy, the mechanics, the harsh truth about motivation, the heavy cost of inaction. All of it has been laying the mental and psychological foundation for this moment. Because understanding power is one thing, becoming it is something else entirely. And now we're no longer talking about theory, we're talking about construction. The deliberate, disciplined, almost ruthless process of building a version of yourself that does not collapse under pressure, does not break under failure, does not disappear when conditions turn against you and everything becomes uncertain. That version of you will not arrive as a gift. It will not come from one breakthrough moment, one powerful video, or one night of brutal honesty in the mirror. It will be built the only way anything real is built. Through repetition, through resistance, through the daily, unglamorous act of showing up and executing, especially when every instinct inside you is screaming to retreat. The unbreakable man is not born, he is forged, and the forge is not comfortable. It is not supposed to be. Every moment you force yourself to act when you don't feel like it is a strike of the hammer. Every time you override resistance and move anyway, you reshape your character into something stronger, denser, and more resilient than it was before. Machiavelli understood that a man who has never been tested is not truly revealed, because character is not what you show when things are easy, when results are visible, when people are watching and impressed. Character is what remains when all of that is gone. When results are slow, when nobody is watching, when doubt is loud and proof is scarce, and the only thing you have left is the decision to keep going no matter what. And Stoicism demands that you train for exactly that moment, not by pretending it won't come, but by preparing so consistently and honestly that when it does, you've already faced it 1,000 times in your own discipline. Dark psychology adds something critical here, the role of identity. The most consistent high performers are not driven by goals. Goals fade once achieved. The most consistent men are driven by identity, by a decision about who they are, an identity reinforced daily through action until it becomes automatic. You are not trying to become someone who takes action. You are deciding right now that you are someone who takes action, someone who moves through resistance as a default, someone for whom hesitation is temporary, not permanent. That shift from goals to identity, from wanting to being, is what changes everything. It is what turns forced action today into natural action tomorrow. It is what transforms struggle into standard. And it is available to you right now, without permission, without validation, without proof, because proof comes after action, not before it. Drop in the comments, I am not becoming unbreakable, I already am. Number 10, the final command. We've reached the end. And before I leave you with this final thought, understand this. Everything you've heard here is useless without one thing. Not reflection, not inspiration, not even agreement. Action. Right now. Today. Within the next hour. Because the man who watches this, nods, feels the fire rise inside him, and then closes the screen and goes back to his old patterns. That man has gained nothing. He has simply added knowledge on top of an unchanged life. And knowledge without execution is the most advanced form of self-deception. Machiavelli did not write for men who understood power. He wrote for men who used it. The Stoics did not speak for those who admired wisdom. They spoke for those who lived it. This channel, Machiavellian Galaxy, is not for men who consume motivation. It is for men who become it. So here is your final command. Not a suggestion, not an idea, a command. Identify the one thing you have been avoiding. The call, the work, the plan, the conversation. The beginning you already know needs to happen, and do it today. Not perfectly, not completely. Just start, because starting, repeated daily with Machiavellian precision and Stoic endurance, becomes momentum. And momentum protected and fed consistently, becomes unstoppable force, the kind that turns ordinary men into legends. You came here for a reason. Now go give that reason a result. Drop in the comments one last time. I move before I'm ready. I am the fire. I am unbreakable. If this video spoke to something real inside you, hit that like button, subscribe to Machiavellian Galaxy, and turn on notifications so you never miss a weapon. The war against mediocrity is daily. Show up for it.